Not gonna lie, there were times while watching The Bride that I felt like I was at Universal's Halloween Horror Haunt. Welcome back to Glenn Hates Everything. We're here today to talk about The Bride, which is Maggie Gyllenhaal's follow-up to The Lost Daughter, her directorial debut. And what a complete U-turn this is. It would be generous to call this movie a hot mess. And I mean that in good ways and bad ways, because there were times where the mess was hot and I was there for it. And then there were times where I wanted to leave the theater. But let's go back and sort of give you an idea of what you have in store here. So it is the ostensible follow-up to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, only this time it's set in 1930s Chicago, and the monster, or the creature, played by Christian Bale, who calls himself Frank, has been alive this whole time, and he's just been wandering the world very lonely and in need of a companion. And so he seeks out Annette Bening, who plays the female version of Victor Frankenstein, and she also has like her own Igor, and that's played by Jeannie, who I'm so happy to see back on my screen again. I've been a fan of her since The Heartbreak Kid, where she was Oscar nominated. Look it up, kids, because most of you know her from Succession. What a great actor. You know, her mother, Elaine May, another legend. It's just so good to see somebody that good back in this role that made me laugh the whole time. But I digress. So Frank is wandering the world in search of a companion. He goes to Annette Bening, and he wants her to reanimate a corpse to give him a bride, a companion. It's platonic, it's sexual, he's not really sure, but he just knows that he's tired of being lonely and he wants someone like him. Enter Jessie Buckley, who first appears at the very beginning as Mary Shelley, who is trying to make good on what she felt was the failed narrative of Frankenstein. She didn't feel it went far enough. She didn't feel like it represented a female point of view, and she wanted to instill the sequel with that. And man, does it have that. Jessie Buckley is a woman who appears to be a sex worker. There's more to it than that. And she, one night, meets her fate and is killed, and then reanimated as the bride by the doctor. And so the two of them go off on this Bonnie and Clyde adventure where it's the two of them against the world. Jessie Buckley's face has this very identifiable stain on it, brought about by the reanimation process, that becomes a wonderful calling card for the female public who start to rally behind these two outlaws. And at times it feels like Joker, Folie à Deux. There's actual musical sequences in it, dance sequences. Although we do have musical sequences brought to us by this film star couple played by Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie's brother, and Julianne Hough, who play like a Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers type screen couple that Frank is a huge fan of. And he will seek out their films no matter where he is in order to get a little taste of that movie magic. It's really fascinating that we have this film about a creature who's more of a cinephile than most cinephiles, and I really like that aspect of it. So following them on their escapades are a pair of detectives played by Peter Sarsgaard and Penelope Cruz, and the relationship between those two is a mirror image of what's happening between Frank and the bride. That the woman feels unseen and she wants to prove herself and she wants to get her due as a detective. And Sarsgaard is clinging onto his titles and doesn't want to cede control like that. And so there's a push-pull between those characters. And I found that fascinating. Unfortunately, the movie is sometimes so deadly dull. It's such a slog at times that it's hard to stay awake or get to the good stuff. And there's plenty of good stuff here. I mean, it's beautifully shot. I do think that Jessie Buckley and Christian Bale feel like they're just in a completely different movie than the actual movie is, and that's kind of hard to explain. But they are so over the top. Christian Bale is just loud and big the whole time, and Jessie Buckley, she does her Hamnet thing. So you saw her crying in Hamnet. Well, you're going to see her crying in The Bride, very similar position. I'm noticing a trend there, Jesse. So maybe you want to like tell the cinematographers, maybe not so much profile crying in this one. It has moments that are sheer brilliance. And then there's lots of montagey stuff in slow motion that kind of takes away from it. At times it feels really skimpy, other times really didactic, feeling like it's story time and someone's reading us a novel. Literally, like the first 10 minutes, I thought were a little rough with that regard. Jesse Buckley just kind of spouts off lots of Mary Shelleyisms in a Mary Shelley-esque voice. And it's a little off-putting at first. Then she goes a little crazy wild. I was reminded of Madonna in Who's That Girl, where she is just kind of being, loud and bratty. And then, we get, lots of similarities, as I said before, to Bonnie and Clyde. It's a very strange piece of filmmaking where I feel like it's just everything but the kitchen sink and then another kitchen sink on top of that. It was a little off-putting, and I felt fairly distant from the film the entire time, with a few grace note moments that I thought really worked. But maybe not enough to add up to anything more than a 6 or a 7, as the kids say. You know a trend is over when someone like me is using that, so let's, cut it out, okay? I think that Maggie Gyllenhaal has veered so far in another direction that it's really difficult to peg her, because The Lost Daughter was much more calm and serene, even though it had a very dark underbelly to it. The tone of it was so different than what we get here. So sure, she's versatile. She could do this big movie. It doesn't feel like a studio movie, even though it's Warner Brothers. It feels like she snuck this by them because it's very subversive. And I mean that in a good way. It's something that I think if it hits you in the right mood, you're going to appreciate this. And if it doesn't, I think you're just going to roll your eyes at this film. It's like kind of has combination of the worst film of the year vibes with, wow, this is really kind of amazing vibes. Now notice I didn't say best of the year because it's nowhere near that. But it's certainly an original piece of filmmaking. And so I'm going to give it to Maggie Gyllenhaal for that. And that's rare that you find something so original. But I don't think that it comes together as a film. What do you think? Are you rushing out to see The Bride now, especially after this review? I hope you do. I hope you leave some comments below and let me know what you think.